Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kada, and I will be your MC for today's program talk, a brief look at NTU psychology. Before we begin, I would like to inform you there will be a Q&A following our panel discussion. So feel free to send in your questions via slido.com using the events code #AskSite at -2023. Now, please allow me to introduce our speaker, Assistant Professor Albert Lee. Professor Albert, over to you.
All right, thank you, Kada, for the warm introduction. And hello, prospective students. I am Albert Lee from the NTU Psychology Program, School of Social Sciences. Today, I'm going to walk you through some of the bread and butter that you would like to know to study psychology or to study at NTU, as a matter of fact. So, all right, let me just get all the slides here. All right, so a little bit about NTU Psychology as a program. To talk about psychology as a program, we need to know a little bit more about, how psychology has come into existence. And psychology is a discipline that involves the scientific study of human behaviors and cognition. So basically understanding how why people do things and why people think about things the way they are. Psychology as a discipline intersects with various fields, including anthropology, biology, medical science, neuroscience, philosophy, and sociology. So you can see that psychology is an intersection of different disciplines, academic disciplines. And for psychology as a program in SSS NTU, it offers scientific and practical training for students who wish to focus their undergraduate studies in psychology. So if you want to know more about how the human mind operates, psychology is something you can consider. This program introduces students to the professional practices of psychologists and prepares students with the required skills and training for postgrad studies if they would like to carry on their education as a psychologist or behavioral researchers. I'm going to follow up this point with some more information afterwards, so please bear with me. Okay. Now, a little bit more about NTU Psychology. So it was launched in 2005, and since then, the program has been growing very healthily. And right now, the current faculty, there are a number of aspects you can look into. So, for example, there are 17 full-time core faculties who are responsible for conducting research and teaching. There are international scholars and active researchers who are, joining the program as well. And also, it is basically acknowledged as one of the world's leading programs in universities. And there are also 3 adjunct faculty members who will be teaching other courses in the program as well. And there are 6 honorary joint appointment members and 9 part-time lecturers. So we do have a mix of different researchers coming from various academic and cultural backgrounds. A little bit about what these faculty members do in their research. So, and you can basically talk about, generate a long list of topics or themes related to psychology. So let me give you some examples here. Developmental psychology is one of the very common field in psychology. It concerns basically the developmental span of how infants, how kids picked up mental building blocks, some of the things that social phenomena, for example. If I would like to put it in a more concrete way, it would be, let's say, when do children pick up grammar in their language? When do children be able to tell right from wrong? And what is the reason they are able to do so? So all these are common questions tackled by developmental psychologists. And of course, the list goes on, and you can talk about cognitive psychologies. How do we understand the inner operations of the head? We can talk about neurosciences, neuropsychology, basically blending cognitive psychology with biosciences. We can take things at a more practical approach, such as educational psychology, social and personality psychology, looking at human behaviors, human thinking at a more social level. Okay. We also have more applied courses, such as environmental psychology, looking at how do we apply psychological principles to environmentalism. How do we raise the awareness of um, environmentalism and so on. And I'm not going to talk about everything here. You will get to see, these are different branches of psychology as a discipline. And many of our faculties at NTU Psychology have a lab focusing on what they do. For myself, for example, Albert, I focus on culture and cognition, basically whether there are cultural differences, cultural similarities in the thinking and actions around the world. And another example here would be Professor Joyce Pan. She is interested in human motivations and behaviors in adolescence. So she has a lab on motive assessment and adolescence behavioral lab. And again, feel free to take a closer look on this slide after my talk. And let me talk a little bit about the undergraduate degree program offered by NTU Psychology. There are currently around 543 undergraduate students as psychology majors. And if you're talking about having psychology as a minor, there are around 100 students every year. And of course, let's not forget students in the double majors in psychology and let's say economics, linguistics and multilingual studies, and also in media analytics. So as you can see, psychology is actually a very good, intellectual ingredient that allows you to basically forge bridges or links with other disciplines. Now, let me talk a little bit about the requirement for you to succeed in the program. So in order for you to graduate with an undergraduate degree, you are required to fulfill 128 AUs within 4 years in your program. And this is a breakdown of what is considered the overview of the curriculum as a psychology major. There will be courses where we call them core courses, where you have to take them in order to give you the foundational understanding, the foundational knowledge of psychology. For example, introduction to psychology, we are going to give you an overview, brush over all the major perspectives in psychology. And of course, psychology is it's more than just, talking. It involves a lot of careful designs in empirical research as well. And that is why we have something called the fundamentals to social science research. It gives you a very good training on methodology, on statistics, and so on. Okay. And moving on to the second level of the curriculum, you'll be talking about all the courses in the 2000 levels, where you take a more specific look at different branches of psychology. For example, we have biopsych, developmental psych, social psych, cognitive psych, personality, individual differences, abnormal psychology, and on and on. And of course, we will be providing you more intensive training on research design and data analysis as well. And after moving on from year 2, you get a chance to take the elective courses that you would like to specialize in. And I'm going to talk about this more in the next slides. But afterwards, if you are, if your academic records allow you to do so, then you will be doing a graduation project, which is the FYP. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the 3000 level courses. These are the really specific areas in different fields of psychology. For example, you might be thinking about positive psychology. So let's say, hey, how do we apply psychology to, make a positive differences in the way people react to the world? How do we encourage people to think about the world and themselves and other people more positively? Then positive psychology would be something that you might be interested in. If you were to take a look at the the evolutionary basis of psychology, then what kind of similarities that we share with other species and differences, then evolutionary side would be something you can consider. And of course, the list go on and on. There are more. There are some modules that are more on the applied side. For example, conservation psychology, and of course there are consumer psychology, which is a very popular course selected or students would be interested in. Now, talking about the 4,000 level courses, these are the really specific areas of studies or training offered by NTU Psychology. So, for example, we are in these courses, we are providing intensive training to students in basically the more on the hands-on research skills. So, for example, laboratory in human and animal neuroscience. In this case, you will be learning to, let's say, analyze data points that we collected from human and animal in the brain. Or we can be talking about a lab course in social psychology. Again, that involves a lot of hands-on research skills that you don't really get out of textbooks. And of course, in 4,000 level courses, we are also offering education in terms of seminars. So basically, in this case, the main difference between a seminar and a lecture is that in the lecture, students will listen. They will be the recipient of knowledge throughout the process. But in seminar, it involves more of intellectual exchanges with everybody in the room. Okay, there will be discussions, there will be debates. You will be thinking on your feet, you'll be thinking on the spot, and you'll be challenging one another intellectually. Okay, and in this area of courses, you can be talking about again some of the fundamental all the classics, all the traditional branches in psychology. Let's say in this case, neuroimaging. Okay, or the qualitative methods in psychology, or you can be talking about more applied courses such as, in this case, the psychology of leadership. Okay, how do we apply what we know about psychology to leadership? And we are going to have a lot of discussions on this theme every single week. Now, this is just a breakdown of the curriculum requirements beside your major. Okay, I'm not going to go into this. These slides are quite self-explanatory. But as you can see, you can also mix and match your academic recipe with some other courses offered by different disciplines. One example here would be, ethics and civics in the multicultural world. You can also look at internship, if you would like to basically get some hands-on experience on getting a job. And of course, there will also be some opportunities for you to align yourself with elective courses. So here's a guide for your curriculum planning. It's not as complicated as some students would think, but it's not hard to give you an overview, right? So in year one, this is basically a list of courses that fundamental courses that you will be taking. Year two, you have some courses that are core and required, and you will have a chance to align yourself with some electives. And as you can see, moving on from second year to third year, fourth year, you have greater flexibility in choosing the modules, the courses that you would like to take, depending on your purpose, depending on your goals. Okay, For those of you who are in PSDS, the curriculum is a little different because by implication, if you are doing more than one major, then there will be a corresponding increase in the workload. But the logic behind the curriculum doesn't really change much. You are still required to take some fundamental required courses. And as you move forward in the program, you will be given more flexibility in deciding what you would like to take, the courses you would like to take. So for those of you who are in second majors, basically, there's a general view to it, and that is, this is basically it is there. So students can apply to pursue a second major in, let's say, any of the disciplines offered within School of Humanities and School of Social Sciences. For example, communication studies offered by, by our school, it's precisely for that purpose. And some other students would like to basically blend in their education with art history. If that's the case, then you can do so with the program offered by the ADM. And for psychology major students have the added option of pursuing a second major in biological sciences at admission, right? So it is a very competitive program. And, we are really talking about the best of the best students in the bunch. Now, what about, hey, I am thinking about a minor, does NTU have an option for minor? So in this case, hey, we do actually have a number of options if this is something you're considering. So for example, all School of Social Sciences and School of Humanities majors, plus gender and diversity studies, health and society, global Asia, and so on. These are basically all the options you can consider for your minor. And if you are into the media or different branches in the media studies, then hey, information and new media and communication studies would be something you can consider as your major. And for ADM, art history and film studies, as I mentioned before. What about if you're more inclined to education? NIE does offer some minor options for drama and performance, education studies, and music, and so on. And of course, one of the strengths at NTU is that it basically allows you to forge different bridges or links with other schools as well. So if you would like to pursue a minor in, let's say, sports science, computing, entrepreneurship, feel free to do so. We have the flexibility for you to work out what is best for your education. So here are some recommendations I have prepared for you to think about, the next 4 years ahead of you. First of all, plan ahead. It's really important that you live not by today, but by, let's say, tomorrow or next week or next month, next semester, and so on. Okay, always plan at least 1 or 2 semesters ahead, meaning that when you have free time, feel free to think about what you would like to pursue at the end of the day. Okay, when you're in your first semester, think ahead. Okay, so let's say in year 2, I would like to be more specific with my studies. I would like to learn more about, let's say, cognitive psychology. In this case, you should plan ahead, okay? And do not wait until the moment comes. And that includes some planning for, let's say, going on for overseas exchange or internship. Again, do not solve problems on the spot. Problems will become a bigger problem if you don't plan ahead. The next point in question is that you would like to consider the core modules first. Excuse me. So clear the core modules first before moving on to the electives. Okay, if you are unable to have a solid understanding on the fundamentals, it will not be fruitful for you to consider anything beyond that. Consistency is also very important, and by that, hey, you should read. Excuse me. My apologies. I am a little under the weather today. I am at the edge of getting a flu, so please pardon my voice and my state. So let me come back to consistency, and that will be to read 3 psychology subjects per semester and clear your BDE requirements consistently. Okay, work out a pace that is comfortable for you throughout the different semesters. Okay, one of the worst thing you can do to yourself is that I am going to take, let's say, 3 courses this semester, but the next semester it will be 5. Okay, your body, your mind is not going to get used to it. So be consistent throughout different semesters is really important. Another point here is to start reading all the 4,000 level subjects during year 3. Mentally prepare yourself. Oh, okay, so these are the courses that will be offered by the program next year. I am going to work towards that goal. And also register 5 or 6 courses every semester to finish your degree in a timely fashion. I have seen different students, trying to work out a somewhat different schedule. It is okay, but by 5 to 6 courses every semester would be somewhere within the norm. Do not squeeze yourself with, let's say, 7, or do not try not to allow yourself to take only 2 or 3. Okay, in this case, you are breaking up the flow. You are breaking up the consistency. Now, let me talk a little bit about the supporting programs surrounding NTU psychology. And one of these programs is called the Undergraduate Research Experience on Campus, short form Eureka. So what is Eureka? Basically, Eureka is a research general elective to provide outstanding undergraduates a chance to pursue independent research under one-on-one supervision. It lasts through a 11-month period, and Eureka enables students to immerse themselves in a vibrant research culture and experience research firsthand. Like I said, supervision goes by one-on-one, and Eureka is by invitation only, and it is tailored for students who are really, really the best of the best. So students from Eureka, students will have the opportunity to undertake it's by invitation, like I mentioned, and it is eligible to usually 2nd and 3rd year undergraduates. These undergraduates will be given a title of the NTU President Research Scholars. So it's a very prestigious opportunity. And NTU PRS are required to undertake a minimum of 160 hours of research over an 11-month period from August to June in an academic year. And NTU PRS are eligible for academic units or stipend and other monetary allowances. So you get to choose whether you are getting paid or you're getting credits out of this experience. And if you're wondering, hey, when I believe I have been doing really well in school, when will I be expecting the invitation? The invitations are sent to eligible students usually in July or August. Now, moving on to another supporting program. It's the Overseas Exchange. It's called the GEM, GEM Discoverer and GEM Explorer. So I will not go deep into this because that is a lot of information. Some of the information is beyond the scope of today's purposes, but check out the exchange programs at the website of Global Education and Mobility, GEM. And it is possible for you to take courses overseas and transfer the AUs back to NTU. Okay, there are something you would like to know about this. So first of all, the courses that you take overseas must be matched to specific courses at NTU before the AU can be transferred. Meaning that you cannot just randomly take some courses overseas and expect the credits to be transferred back to NTU. Okay, figure that out. But make sure that, okay, so this course is being, there's a parallel at NTU, and that's how you can earn your credits overseas. And the next point I would like to talk about is that the psych core courses, the fundamental courses, cannot only be taken at NTU. And the third point here is that you can transfer back up to 20 AUs from exchange, and you are only allowed to transfer a maximum of 3 courses during exchange and apply them towards the major electives requirement. And the rest can be credited over as BDE. Okay, so there are some restrictions and some flexibility which you can exercise with the GEM Explorer and GEM Discoverer. And I think the highlight of these two twin programs is that you can really submerge yourself into a different education environment overseas. You know, hey, how do classrooms look like? How does teaching and learning look like or feel like in, let's say, in South Korea, in China, in the States, in Australia, in Canada, and so on. This is a good opportunity for you to expand your horizon without sacrificing learning. That's my point. Now, as you are moving forward to the end of the program, NTU also offer an opportunity for students to for internship. So in this case, students can align themselves with different organizations locally at in Singapore. So, for example, you know, you might be thinking about, hey, you know, I would like to understand how work is really done in different organizations, in hotels, in consultancy, in HR firms. So in this case, you might want to align yourself with all the firms in this category. But what about, you know, if you are more in line with, let's say, working with the ministries, there are options as well. You can be considering working for the police force, for the Home Team Academy, for the Singapore Prison Service, and so on. And of course, there are other ministry bodies as well, all the way from Family and Social Development, Culture, Community and Youth, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Education, and so on and so on. Now, one final component I would like to talk about here is the final year project, the FYP. So the FYP remains a prerequisite for the honors with highest distinction and honors distinction degree. So if you would like to, you know, graduate with the highest level of recognition, FYP is a must. You cannot run away from it. So an FYP requirement also depends on your cumulative GPA, which is the CGPA at the end of your third year. So it's actually a very competitive placement. So if you are 3.9 or above, FYP is mandatory. It is mandatory because NTU Psychology would like to prepare the outstanding students for higher education. And for a lot of higher education, you are unable to apply unless and until you have a final year project to present with your applications. And that's basically the rationale behind the mandatory stuff. You know, why is this mandatory? Hey, because, you know, you have proven to the world that you are an outstanding student. That's why we would like to, you know, push you a little bit forward by having you complete the FYP as well. So if you are in the middle range, CGPA of 3.75 to 3.89, you can opt in to do your FYP, but it's not required. And if your CGPA is 3.75 or below, FYP is not allowed. So as you can see, it's a very competitive and prestigious placement. Excuse me. And so what is the FYP about, the nature of FYP? Excuse me. That was a little embarrassing. Yes, but anyway, let's jump back to FYP. So it involves large-scale research project, and this is something that some students, or I would say a lot of students, are very excited about. So basically, you'll be working with an active researchers, such as your supervisor, on an empirical project, or I would say, you know, it could be empirical, it could be something else. It could be a lit review, for example. Uh, you can be basically, the way I see the FYP here is that you are basically melting everything you have learned within in the past 4 years into a big pot of academic project. Okay, melting everything you have learned into one single project. It can be experimental, it can be based on survey or qualitative project. Okay, anything you would like to pursue in this final punch in the program. Or that would be the empirical side. If you are thinking, hey, I am interested in conducting a thorough literature review for something, then there will be a long format lit review and systematic review. You can complete your FYP in such a fashion as well. So, and in the past, our undergraduates have been awarded grants to support their FYP. So, these are brilliant students from the past, and they have basically received recognition from other organizations in the form of grants. So, for example, students at NTU Psychology have been awarded by National Council on Problem Gambling. So looking at the pros and cons, within the gambling community, what do we gain from gambling, and what do we lose from gambling behaviors, and so on. If your research project is family oriented, you might be able to receive support from the Family Research Fund. They will give you the cash, the money you need to conduct family related research. There are also other options too, such as the Home Team Research Grant, the Behavioral Unit, and Singapore Children's Society, and some other research projects related to that area as well. Now, let me talk about something that some of you or some of your parents might be interested in, and that would be career options. So, for a layperson who doesn't know much about psychology, I think the career options this person can generate out of psychology is quite limited. But in fact, a degree in psychology can take you very far in terms of careers. So, for example, you might be able to get a very good job in the domains of arts, nonprofit and non-governmental organizations, charity organizations. For example, they seek psychologists. They seek people with a psychology background or degree. If you're talking about, let's say, the commercial sectors, you have banking, finance, and business as well. They do need someone with a psychology degree because, hey, you're talking about banking, and it's highly the underlying constructs of banking behaviors, finance behaviors are heavily driven by, psychological principles. And let's not forget that, if you are graduating from, NTU Psychology, you will have a lot of training in statistics, working with big data, for example, and that's really something that the world nowadays wants. I would like to hire someone who is good with statistics, who is able to manage big data. You can also align yourself with the creative industries, which involves advertising, journalism, mass media, IT, and computer services. Yes, they do have relevance to psychology as well. Education and research, these are the main players, the key settings where we can apply psychology. And of course, healthcare industries, how do we improve the well-being of patients? How do we improve the dynamics between doctors and patients, right? Again, we're talking about psychology here. And finally, public and civil service and statutory boards, they do need people with intensive training in psychology as well. So finally, let me conclude with something you would like to read deep into, and that would be the NTU academic integrity policy. So I'm not going to go deep into each and every point, but pay attention that NTU takes academic integrity very seriously, just like other international world-class universities. We do take integrity as a central part of education. So three big points that you would like to focus more or read more about is first of all, plagiarism. What constitutes plagiarism, and what are the contexts for it? Okay, so educate yourself with this so that you are free from serious mistakes. Academic fraud, what does it mean by cheating or fraud? Read into it as well. And finally, behaviors that facilitate academic dishonesty. Again, I would encourage you to read this and all the other 2 points carefully in preparation for your entry to the program. And finally, I would like to walk you through, with some of the key faculty members in the program. We have the head of the program, Dr. Andy Ho, the first year academic advisor, Dr. Shu Lin. We have the HP 1000. This is a course. The instructor of this course is Dr. Darren Yo, and 1100 instructor, that would be Dr. Tan Chin Hong. And if you are thinking about, preparing yourself for internship, then you should talk to Dr. Michael Groomer, who is the internship coordinator. And finally, for administrative registration matters, you can contact our managers, who is Ms. Ang Yingjia and also Mr. Guanhua Gan. They are responsible for the everyday matter of the psychology program. And okay, I'm going to conclude my talk with a QR code here. If you have any questions, if you want to read into the details of the program and the nature of the university of the schools, feel free to use this code. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me today. I am opening myself up for questions. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Albert, for your presentation. Now it's time for our Q&A. If you have yet to send in your questions, please do so now via Slido, #ASKPSY-2023. I believe, Professor Albert, it will be on your next slide.
Okay.
All right.
Yes. All right. My bad.
No worries. Okay, we got our first question for today. Actually, quite a number of them have this concern. The question is, must students excel in mathematics and biology to do well in the program?
I see. This is indeed a common question asked by many students in the past. Mathematics, I don't think so. Okay, so I think if I would like to make an inference here, I think the reasoning, the rationale behind this question is that hey, my impression is that statistics and mathematics, they are quite similar. And therefore, if I'm not good at math, I will suck in statistics. Is that true? Well, the fact here is that mathematics and statistics, they are related. Okay, don't get me wrong, but they are two different disciplines. My point here is that you don't need to be good at math to be good at statistics. Okay, so if you are decent in the basic arithmetic operations, then you should do just as well in statistics. Okay, it is a whole different animal. It is related to math because they use numbers, but that's about it. For biology, I don't think it is going to, if you're not good at biology, it's not going to prevent you from doing well in the program. But at the same time, let me remind you that there are some courses that are really biology intensive. Okay, so for example, neuroscience, some courses on, let's say, off my head right now would be the neuroscience of love. Okay, looking at the experience of love at the neurological level. So in this case, if you are not interested in biology, this may not be a course you would like to prioritize. Okay, you might still want to challenge yourself with this course, but hey, there are other options, right? And if you are disinclined to study biology, then maybe you can consider something else. But at the end of the day, I don't think not being good at biology will prevent you from progressing as planned in the program. So no.
I would agree with you, Professor. I think as a student, our level 1000 and 2000 courses are enough to give you the foundations and the fundamentals of the field itself. And like what Professor Albert has mentioned, in the advanced modules, you can choose not to pursue certain modules if you find that it's not something you're interested in. So you can work out with what is on your strengths.
Exactly. Yeah, Kada, I agree with your point here. I think, being able to plan ahead of time, will also prepare you to address this question, right? I mean, in this case, I know I'm not good at, let's say, memorizing a long string of alphabets, right? All the terminology in biology, they can be intimidating to read and to memorize sometimes. So plan ahead. If you would like to stay away from biology, you can you have the flexibility to do so. And therefore, planning ahead, 2 semesters ahead or even a year ahead would be a good strategy to consider.
And moving on to our next question. This is for Professor Albert. From your point of view as a professor, what do psychology students struggle with?
Oh, this is a good question. So I think based on my experience as a supervisor and mentor, I think some students may have trouble managing their time. Okay, and it is actually one of the common biases that we have as human beings, and there's nothing surprising about it. It's called the planning fallacy. Okay, you anticipate that you can finish a long essay within 72 hours, when in fact you cannot. Okay, but then guess what? You don't learn from your mistakes. Okay, the next time a long essay is due, you still think that you are able to finish it within 72 hours. Okay, this is a very well-known bias called the planning fallacy. Okay, and what I would like you to learn as a prospective student is that you have to work really hard to overcome these biases. Okay, there's no good recipe for it except to say, hey, the last time I learned that, the last time I thought I could finish a long essay within 3 days, I couldn't. Burn that experience into your retina, okay? Learn from that mistake so that you can plan ahead of time. Give yourself double the time than 3 days. So time management is something that students would struggle because they have no clue what is going to happen ahead of them. When you're thinking ahead of time, oh, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. You are thinking about the future in a vacuum, okay? You are basically not taking into considerations that, hey, something urgent might happen, okay? Maybe there's something, something urgent that requires your attention from your family, from your friends, right? In this case, you'll be distracted, right? So that's why you always want to leave some leeway for yourself. And that requires planning. That requires the recognition that, hey, our future is not always beautiful. There will always be things that are coming at us at the last minute. Have that recognition itself is enough for you to, kind of prepare for the planning fallacy. So time management is something. It's a common struggle by some students. Okay, again, it goes back to the point that I was sharing. Plan ahead of time. Don't leave things. Do not become a deadline fighter. I think that's a term. Deadline fighter. Do not become one of them. Yeah. So, and I think the other less common challenge that I have seen in students is the transition from JC to university, because in this case you're talking about a whole different ecology here. The teaching styles are different. There's no one holding your wrist, leading you to different ways. You are expected to be an independent, a mature learner, and sometimes students might not be completely prepared for it. Okay, and in response to this challenge, NTU Psychology actually introduces different supporting programs for these students. For example, in your first year, first year students will be assigned an academic mentor, a person who is going to listen to your problems and give you advice so that your transition can become more problem-free. Okay, and every year, faculty members will become a mentor of, let's say, a handful of students, myself included. Okay, so if you have any trouble, if you foresee yourself having trouble with the transition from your old institution to the new institution, right? Feel free to talk to us. Okay, we have open doors policies. We are nice people. We don't eat people, so feel free to talk to us.
I can testify that professors are generally very nice. And if anything, with the time management part of things, most courses, normally the professors will tell you in advance when the deadline is expected. So you can roughly gauge when it will be the peak season, when it will be a time that you can start preparing for your assignments and not do your essays last minute, which is something that I gotta say that for students, you are fighting time, dividing time with your co-curricular activities or etc. So it is at the end of the day learning how to manage your time better as a student in uni.
Yeah. And I believe, Kata, you have, your own share of experiences whereby, hey, you gotta motivate yourself to manage your time, right? Whether you like it or not, it's a different thing. Whether you like it or not, it's completely different from whether you should or you should not. And in this case, I think you and every other students have learned to be more conscious of their time.
Yeah, it is a skill that whether you like it or not, you will definitely hone it over time, thankfully.
Exactly. Yeah. And that has implications for the future as well, right? So let's say, you have completed the degree and you're moving on to, let's say, higher education or even in the job market, right? All the employers in the world, they can also demand the same thing from you. Hey, I have 7 things for you to do by the end of the day, and it's up to you to decide which one is the priority. It's up to you to decide whether you would like to basically work more smartly, and work more intelligently and work more efficiently, right? And that boils down to all the training that you have got from NTU psychology, right? You have to basically learn to cope with different demands from different directions. And if you don't plan ahead, if you do not motivate yourself to manage your time better, then you are signing up for sufferings at the end of the day.
And moving to our next question. This is a question regarding the future itself. One of them was asking, why is there a need to pursue graduate programs to practice psychology?
So there are several ways to answer this question. The first layer to answer this question is that, what do you mean by practicing psychology? So my understanding here is that, you can be talking about practicing psychology as a practitioner, right? Basically clinical psychology or counseling psychology. So in this case, because you are involving, treatment, you are dealing with people who need help. Then of course, I think the requirement is that, hey, I would like you to obtain sufficient training before you get to the world and treat people, right? So that makes a lot of sense. But in other non-clinical, non-counseling contexts, being able to practice psychology, as in I am trying to apply psychology to resolve everyday problem, right? That itself is also calling for some scrutiny or some basically rigor, right? We don't want people, developing or polishing let's say, our policies if this person is not qualified for it, right? So that's why I think that, in order for you to make a difference with psychology, it's a good thing, it's a beautiful thing, but we would like to maintain the level of standards to make sure that, if you were to use psychology on the world and on people, you better be well equipped, you better be well prepared for it. And that's why, usually for these kind of careers, these kind of jobs, the world, Singapore, or any other places on the planet, they require people with extensive knowledge of psychology and not, let's say, half a bucket of psychology.
Moving on to our next question.
Mhm.
This is towards the application of psychology. The person has asked, could you give an example of how research in psychology is applied in our daily life in Singapore?
Oh, this is a very interesting question. So I think that a lot of research comes from basic research, and by that I mean you have to start from all the way from the conceptual level, all the way from the basic variables. Okay, after you identify an effect, then we can see, hey, we have found this effect with different methods again and again and again. We are very confident that this effect exists. This is not a something illusory. This is something real, right? Then the next step here would be to apply basic research to applied settings, right? Such as education, such as offices, such as consumer behaviors, and so on. Okay. And in this case, the transition from basic research to applied research, it's a very long process because after all, we are trying to apply something theoretical to something, to a context that is highly relevant to our daily life, right? So usually people would work with collaborators. Let's say, hey, I have this uh, set of findings, and it has been replicated many times in the past already. It is very robust. It is very real here. Can I work with you and apply these findings to a more naturalistic context? And when you're talking about this, basically we have a long list of collaboration partners working with NTU. So for example, we have the MOE. Okay, we are doing a lot of applied research on how to facilitate learning, how to facilitate education, how do we promote something called holistic learning. Okay, the whole thing about holistic learning is that it came from basic research. We now know that learning is a lot more efficient, a lot more memorable, and a lot more applicable if we are delivering knowledge in a more holistic manner. We are not testing students in one and only one way. They are expressing their knowledge. They are telling the teachers what they know from all different approaches, from all different angles. As it turns out, this is a great approach for education. Okay, but the point I'm trying to make here is that all these applied research came from basic research. We now know that, hey, holistic learning is good. Now we apply this finding to different classrooms, let's say in Singapore. And thanks to MOE, we are able to do that. And of course, we have other ministry bodies doing the same thing in different versions as well.
And similar to the topic of research, one of the students have asked, could you share more about the Eureka program you talked about earlier? What kind of Eureka research do students conduct with psychology professors?
Oh, I think this is another interesting questions. Just to preempt you with what to expect with Eureka. Eureka is actually very, very flexible. It's one of the most flexible programs I've ever seen. Not only at NTU but also in different across different institutions. By affiliating yourself with Eureka, you are able to do research with a faculty member one-on-one, as I mentioned, right? And let's say you are working on a Eureka project with me. Okay, I was supervising 3 Eureka students last academic year, and 2 of them were working on the psychology of religion. So basically, they would like to look at cultural differences in the beliefs in God. Across different cultures, there are different religions, and within different religions, there are God or higher powers. They are being represented differently, right? So basically, last year, what I was doing with my students was that we were conducting projects looking at similarities and differences across the perception of higher powers in different religions. Okay, so that would be one example. And I'm using this example to show you how flexible the research projects can be. Okay, and of course, if you would like to look at more applied research, we have Eureka projects for that as well. I have Eureka students in the past who were working on, let's say, the psychology behind learning. So what are the mental processes that are the pillars for learning? So, what are these psychological engines that allow people to learn effectively? So that was one of the projects by Eureka students as well. And as you can see, this is a very applied project. Yeah.
And I think to add on for Eureka itself, you do not have to go with a professor who is from the same discipline. You are also able to reach out to professors from other disciplines or courses. We have students that from a psychology program, typically some of them who want to work with younger children. So they have engaged professors from the National Institute of Education to start a research project from there. Moving on to the last question that we have in time. This is a question for Professor. Professor, how did you know that psychology is the right course for you? And what motivated you to study at a PhD level?
Oh, okay. Oh, this is a little personal, but I don't mind sharing my personal story, just to see, whether it rings a bell in the audience among our prospective students as well. I knew I wanted psychology all the way from introduction, when I was taking introductory psych. So basically they call it the psychology 101, basically the basic course. Prior to that, I was actually planning to go to business school. I was talking to my parents, and my parents thought, hey, if you're still clueless about what to pursue in university, why don't you just go for accounting, right? I think they were taking a very safe and secure option for me. Hey, in accounting, there's nothing to lose. You will end up getting a very fixed and secure salary down the road, right? So, at that time, I wasn't really thinking clearly about what I would like to pursue. So, okay, so I would like to prepare myself for the business program. And then that summer, after I submit my application, that was a summer, and I got nothing better to do, so I took a summer course on the introduction in psychology. And that was the moment when I fell in love with psychology. Hey, wow, this is exactly what I would like to study. Okay. And I think my interest in psychology back then was so intense that I was reading ahead of the lectures. So when the instructor was teaching chapter 2, I was reading chapter 6 already at home. So, judging from the behavior, I made the inference that, hey, if I'm not interested in psychology, I would not have read ahead of time, right? So I convinced myself that, hey, maybe psychology is something it's something I can consider. And as it turns out, my decision did not disappoint me. I became more and more interested in different disciplines in psychology. And that didn't take me long before I said, hey, after graduation, I'm going to collect more research experience. I am going to prepare myself for graduate school, working as a research assistant, at a university before. So I spent a year or two, working as a research assistant. I applied for graduate school in Canada, and that's also where I got my PhD degree. Yeah. So I think that, from that moment on, my path ahead of me was quite linear, in the sense that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Okay. But at the same time, I don't want to give the impression to students that, job prospects or future prospects is always linear. I think I would like to say that at the end of the day, if I wanted to, I could have pursued something else as well with the psychology degree. So it's actually quite diversified with all the options ahead of you. Just that I was quite determined that, hey, I would like to make psychology something I do for a living. I would like to think about psychology, the things that I like about psychology, on a daily basis. Okay. And if that's my criterion, then being a researcher, being a faculty member at the university is, it's one of the few options. Yeah. But that doesn't stop other students from looking at something beyond, let's say, professorship or scientist. There are a lot of options going on. Yeah.
Thank you for your heartening sharing. Well, there are definitely a lot of different jobs and prospects for
Yeah.
psychology graduate students. So for those who are still curious to find out more about what you can look forward to after graduating from the psychology program, you can look up on our NTU website for more information. And with that, I'd like to thank the audience for your questions. But unfortunately, that is all the time that we have for today. And thank you again, Professor Albert, for your time
Thank you,
today.
Kara. Yeah,
Now,
and thank you to all the prospective students.
Yep. And our next talk will be A World of Our Own Making, Sociology as a Challenge to the Inevitable by Professor Shannon Ang at 3 p.m. If you are on NTU Open House microsites, you will be able to view the list of talks for our school under the College of Humanities, Arts and Social Sciences. And with that, have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.